Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Coach the Coach Radio. Brought to you by the Business RadioX Ambassador Program, the no-cost business development strategy for coaches who want to spend more time serving local business clients and less time selling them. Go to brxambassador.com to learn more. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Coach the Coach Radio, and this is going to be a good one. Today we have on the show Thomas Strehle with Focal Point Coaching and Training. Welcome, Thomas.
Lee, how are you? It's great to be with you today.
Well, I'm excited to learn what you're up to. Tell us a little bit about Focal Point Coaching and Training. How you serving folks?
You know, Focal Point starts with Brian Tracy, who's our founder, who I would encourage our listeners to Google him. Very interesting guy, world-class motivational speaker, over 80 books. And what I really like about Focal Point, Lee, is, you know, our mission is to change the world through business leadership and training. And we have a metaphor called Pebble on the Pond, where we like to impact the world through clients, then their families, you know, the businesses with which they're operating in, the communities, and it kind of permeates from there. So we have a very engaged, clientele and a very engaged list of coaches, and I'm really proud to be a franchise owner for Focal Point. It's fantastic.
So now, what's your backstory? How did you get involved in Focal Point? Like, what were you doing prior to Focal Point?
Well, it's interesting. I've had the fortunate opportunity in my life to serve in the military, so I'm a retired lieutenant colonel. I then served 30 years in global, mostly HR positions in business with some terrific companies and, you know, with some terrific leaders. And, at the end of that 30 years in the corporate world, I wanted to go off and do the fun part of what I used to do in HR, which is to influence leaders, have an impact on businesses. And I've just been able to, I think capitalize on all of that kind of lifelong experience and working with some really, really outstanding clients.
Now, when you were in HR, you said you spent quite a few years in HR. Was coaching and executive coaching and leadership coaching, was that kind of a thing when you started, or did it start to become a thing maybe towards the tail end of your career? Where was coaching kind of seen from the HR perspective?
You know, it's a great question, Lee. And I would even say, going back to my days as a lieutenant in the military, where you're always influencing leaders. And I mean, that's really what coaching is about. It's not providing a solution. It's having, the individual kind of analyze their situation and come up with a solution for themselves. I'd like to just describe a couple of the people that I've had a chance to work with that believe I have influenced significantly through my both the military and the corporate career. I mean, I've had a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff I was on his staff, and I believe provided a lot of input to his leadership. The current leader of of SOCOM, which is the Special Operations Command, as somebody that I've kind of mentored throughout the evolution of his growth into a 4-star general. Back to kind of the corporate sector, I've been a senior leader on the staff of the current CEOs of Constellation Brands, Beam Suntory, and Bank of America. And I've also been on the staff of a guy who, again, you can Google him. I won't mention his name, but he's the current chief of, chairman of the board of Apple. So all of these individuals, I describe these kind of cool, high-powered individuals only to say that it was a different journey with each of them. And, part of it was them influencing me and my leadership style, certainly, but almost in every case, I was in a position to help influence something about how they developed and about the decisions they were making to impact their business. And just very, very fulfilling. I mean, I've kind of been coaching my whole life, to be honest with you.
So now when you're working with folks, is it something that you believe that everybody has this kind of leadership within them and it just needs a little coaxing to come out? Or is it something that you believe that people are kind of born leaders and that those are the people that you really got to maximize their talents?
That's really a great question. When as you're describing this, I'm thinking of, Vince Lombardi, who said, "Leaders are made; they are not born." And I like to always go back to a lot of coaching organizations. They'll kind of take on anybody. One thing I like about Focal Point is, just as the clients are very selective about who they pick to work with, at Focal Point, we're very selective on who we pick to work with as well. And, there's this kind of adage in the coaching business that you try and focus and identify, during my certification. It's like, okay, Strehle, figure out who is your ideal client. And when I look at my list of people I'm either currently coaching or have recently coached, I've got everything from a professional sports agent, multiple CEOs, entrepreneurs of very small businesses who just have an idea and they're working through this idea to figure out how to bring their business to life. Startup companies. I work with a bunch of small business owners in the Boca Raton area, who are actually just looking at the cycle of their business. Where is their cycle in the evolution? Are they in a growth cycle, or are they in a stagnant cycle? And how can I help them kind of get through all that? I also work with individual leaders and teams. So I've got individuals who are saying, man, I just can't get my team motivated and I can't get them to communicate. And then maybe their teams are struggling. And especially in this environment on the work from home piece, it's just, there are some incredibly new components to the whole leadership challenge that's very interesting. And then again, maybe a couple examples on the military side. I served as the aide de camp for the commander of Berlin. And this was back, I'm dating myself a little bit, but during the Cold War when the wall was still up. So we had lots of challenges around soldiers and motivation and being on an island in the middle of the Cold War. And also served, this is an interesting one, I think about it. I had a chance to serve as the head of riot control for the 82nd Airborne Division at a presidential election. And this was a few presidents ago, not a recent one. And as I watched things unfold on January 6th, I thought, man, the challenges, the leadership challenges that those guys have on the ground are much different than I faced back a while back. So it's just, many problems remain the same and many things change. So it's just a very dynamic time.
Now, can you talk about the decision that you went through when you were leaving corporate and you were kind of starting this new act in your career? Why did you just kind of say, you know what? Thomas has lived a wonderful life, a very life with a lot of diverse experiences. I'm going to do it the Thomas method of doing coaching. But you decided instead to buy a franchise, a Focal Point franchise. What was kind of the thought process there of going it alone rather than kind of joining forces with Focal Point?
That's another great question, Lee. And I had a few iterations through my career where I did coaching on my own, which was a fantastic experience. But when I looked at Focal Point, what Focal Point provides me, first of all, is all of the philosophy, the Brian Tracy philosophy, and all of the tools and resources that I need to bring the best product to the client. I mean, literally, you could present me with any issue, and if I'm not an expert or haven't been exposed to that in my personal career, I can tap either one of our 200 Focal Point coaches to help me, or look at a library of resources available on certain topics. And, it's a terrific foundation to do that. I further to your question on the whole franchise bit, I came down to Florida where I had a second home, and my idea was to buy a franchise. I hadn't really focused on being a coach. And I looked at many of the different, I thought, you know what, I want to do something different after this 30 years of corporate life. So I looked at, everything from fast food to pets. I've got two beautiful Weimaraners, big dog lover. So I thought, wouldn't that be cool to do something you'd really enjoy? The focal point opportunity just kept passing my way. And then I thought about, what do you really enjoy doing? And that is influencing people. I like to joke that in my HR career, I was always, the first stop was the complaint department, and about 10% of what I did was being able to do the true coaching, sitting with executives, influencing the business. And I thought, you know what? There's a reason focal point keeps crossing my path. This is an opportunity to have the power of a structure and an organization behind me, but also to tap, my strengths and my experience and what I've done. And I continue to learn from focal point, and that's the neat thing. So I'm not out there as a coach just kind of winging it and going, Strehle did this might work. He did that, this might work. I've got the power of just a tremendous amount of experience behind me and the philosophy and the tools to help me with my clients.
Well, walk me through what it looks like when you're beginning a relationship with a new client. Like, what is the pain that they're having? Are they frustrated? Have they never had a coach before? Are they like what's usually that point of entry when you start working with them? And then walk me through what that kind of maybe initial conversation or first few kind of action points are.
I probably would spend, normally I would have probably 4 different conversations with a client before we would, mutually agree to work together. We spend a lot of time getting to know the client. What are their challenges? What are their financial goals? What is their team like? How does their team operate? How do they communicate? And then we really look at the client, herself or himself. For example, if they're a small business owner, what are their long-term plans? So do they want to divest of the business eventually? Do they want a growth model? What cycle in the business cycle are they in? And we go through, like I say, probably starting with a very casual conversation. Then we take it to the next step where we'll do a phone call to kind of get to know each other more. Then I do what we call a strategic business review, where it will be an in-depth, probably a 90-minute conversation with that leader or business owner to really get to know them in depth. And we'll get into very, asking that second, third, and fourth question to kind of peel back the onion on what it is about this client that I feel that I can contribute that's going to be a success. One of the things, I know many of our listeners have probably heard of, some of the behavioral assessments, and many of you have probably taken, the MBTI, the Myers-Briggs, or the predictive index. At Focal Point, we use a talent insights assessment, which is called the DISC. And I love the DISC because the DISC really allows us to get to know the person. So once the client is signed on, to your question of maybe what are the first steps, I would then ask the client to take this DISC assessment, which is about a 30-minute online assessment. And the depending on which iteration of it, for example, we've got a very, very quality aspect of the DISC that's around emotional intelligence, which is so important, such a great important characteristic of leaders and business owners. The report is about, I don't know, I've seen reports that are, a couple hundred pages, which is just overwhelming. But then I distill that down and try and further get to understand, what are the behavioral drivers and motivators of the leader, and what is their level of emotional intelligence? By using a behavioral assessment, this will then help me to get a better understanding of the client, what their needs are, but most importantly, how are they wired as an individual? And again, it's just a window of insight into how I can help them as a coach to meet their fundamental needs and improve whatever areas they're looking to improve.
Now, how much self-awareness does it require for someone to really benefit from coaching? Because it sounds like if I was working in a company and my boss said, hey, you need a coach, my frame of mind may not be in the right place in order to take advantage of that opportunity. Does it take a level of humbleness, a level of vulnerability to even be open to getting a coach or benefiting from a coach?
That is an absolutely critical factor, Lee. I mean, I get clients all the time, and as an senior HR leader and CHRO, we often encouraged and presented opportunities for employees to get coached. It really depends on the individual. Some of them are completely resistant. Some are absolutely enamored that you're investing money and getting them developmental opportunities. I'll be honest, if I had somebody that called me today and said, Tom, I just had my review and I've been ordered to get coaching to improve, X, Y, and Z, I would certainly have an intake conversation with this individual. But it's very likely that I would not accept this person as a coaching client because I really have been in this movie before, both as a CHRO and as a leader and as, an executive coach where the person is just going through the motions. And if they're not committed to coaching, and one of the things, again, I think that's unique at Focal Point, we actually take them through call it a form, but we ask them to sign a commitment that they're going to do the prep, for example, that they're going to, take the assessments, that they're going to commit to the times that they have scheduled. Because to your point, I mean, it's exactly right on. There are many people, and in the corporate world, they're saying, Mary or Jim, we're requiring you to get a coach. Those are generally not good candidates for coaching. And I'll be honest, from the selfish part of me, because I'm doing this because now I want some self-satisfaction out of what I'm doing. If somebody's just going through the motions, I mean, I had a recent client that was just going through the motions, and I was like, you know what, you're not getting your money's worth because you don't want to be coached. And I'm fine to sit here on a call and just chat with you and have a good old time, but it's our sessions are demanding that we require homework and preparation and insight, and we require a degree of humility and self-awareness in order to have a successful coaching relationship.
Now, if you were giving advice to anybody that maybe was in your shoes pre-Focal Point and they're exiting kind of their corporate life or their enterprise life, and they're entering this new world of coaching, is there any kind of do's and don'ts when you're making the leap into a coaching practice that you can share?
Well, I think, coaching is a challenging career, and there's a lot of competitors. First of all, there's a lot of independent coaches. There are a lot of coaching franchise type of models. And I would say, one, there really has to be a passion around it from your end. And I think it really, it's really helpful if you've had experience coaching before. This is not a profession, as easy as it may be described sometimes as, well, you can just sit down and use your experience to help somebody coach through. We wear a lot of different hats, and in our certification, we're always told, don't be a psychiatrist or psychologist, or, you're not a life coach. You're more of a business coach and a career coach. And you know what? Inevitably, you end up kind of being all of the above, because if you have a strong relationship with the client, you're going to talk about what they do in their off time. You're going to encourage them to balance their lifestyle. We even have an assessment that I give as part of this intake that I talked about, where we try and understand what are the important motivators outside of the office in terms of their personal relationships and in terms of their physical fitness. And because all of these things really are part of, the whole person concept. So, I guess the advice I would give is make sure you've really explored it. You understand not only the satisfaction pieces, but the implications of it. We're not here to give advice. We're here to help people develop their own solutions to real issues that have implications on their personal life, their family, their business and employees, and their communities. So make sure you understand the full plethora of responsibility that you have before you dive into this as a profession.
Well, Thomas, if there's anyone out there that wants to learn more about your practice and get on your calendar, what is the website or the best way to reach you?
Yeah, I'm at, my website is Thomas Strehle, that's ThomasStrehle.focalpointcoaching.com, or my email is tstrehle, just my first initial Strehle, at focalpointcoaching.com. And I'd be happy to talk to anyone that is exploring coaching as an opportunity, or someone that has heard something I've said and would be interested, in exploring whether coaching's right for them.
Good stuff. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story today. You're doing important work, and we appreciate you.
Lee, it's fantastic, and I appreciate you guys' program and the emphasis you put on a very important aspect of growing businesses and people.
All right, this is Lee Cantor. We will see you all next time on Coach the Coach Radio.